Good afternoon, LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us. I am Casey Hawkins, and I'm joined today by my friend Trisha. We are going to be chatting through re-engaged leads in HubSpot, specifically in the new HubSpot scoring tool, and just chatting through how you can identify when contacts are re-engaged, and what to do in HubSpot with those contacts. How are you doing today, Trisha?
I'm doing great, Casey. I'm so glad you asked. It's good to see you, and I'm excited to talk about this.
I am super excited to have you here with me again. Trisha and I have been working together for a long time, and it's always interesting to hear her perspective on things. Always doing good work and everything like that.
And
So
I love a re-engaged lead, man, because it's one thing if somebody comes to your website the first time and fills out a contact form, but we all know that well, at least in my case, it's always been that the majority of those sales can never actually get on the phone or get to respond to an email, so they ghost you. But if they've come a second time around, that's more interesting. Um, they already have some experience with the brand. It's telling me they're a little bit more highly engaged. And so I always want to make sure I have some kind of a mechanism to give sales a heads up that like this isn't just this is different than your normal lead flow to date. Like this is somebody who's a little bit further along.
yeah. So I also think the re-engage process is, I don't know, I don't want to say more important than that. You knew that, but I put one of my posts the other day was your next great lead could be in your CRM already. My friend Chris commented and was like, "It's not might, it is." Like they probably are, and I think it's so. I think a lot of our time as marketers were spent lead generation, how to get more leads, how to get those leads over to sales as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, what that ends up meaning is we sometimes don't spend enough time on those leads that are already in our system. And how do we get them back to sales? When do we get them back to sales? And things like that. Please feel free to comment if you are watching live or if you're watching on demand. We are happy to answer any questions that you have live. It helps us. It helps us make sure that we're speaking to you. And then if you're watching on demand, also feel free to leave comments, and I will follow up. I will follow up with you on each of those. And if you have a process already, we'd love to hear kind of what you're doing. Are you using lead scoring? Are you doing something else? Curious to hear your thoughts in the comments on all of that. So when you talk about re-engaged leads, Trisha, what are we talking about there? Are we talking people that filled out the form yesterday, a month ago? What's that look like for you?
It could be all those things. To me, it can be all those things and even more. So I mentioned the ghosting behavior, which is really, really common. It's sad. But quite frequently, anyway, I'm just going to run through a bunch of scenarios that you might consider a re-engaged lead. So one is somebody came through last week, sales couldn't get a hold of them. They've, DQ'd them as a no response lead. But all of a sudden today they came through and they tried to find the pricing on the website. So that's very interesting. That's a very interesting signal. That's something I want to get in front of sales. Another, if you look at it on an account basis as opposed to a contact, I have seen really frequently that a middle level manager type, like the more hands-on type, will come to the website, look at a bunch of product pages, submit a contact form, and sales will be working on that lead. And then the next day, I'll see some inquiries from the CEO or somebody from the C-suite And again, it's more of an account view, but it's showing deeper engagement. And not only do I want to make sure sales knows about that, but I want to make sure that that lead goes to the same person that the first lead went to, so that you don't have, two people now approaching the one account.
Yeah.
And then you have a scenario where it could have had the initial engagement could have been maybe a couple of months ago on the website, and maybe they show up at your trade show booth and you see them in an import, but you also see through that import that they have previous activity. So that's a little bit different as well.
Yeah. So it can be the re-engage lead, it can be either the person, but it also can be the company,
Yeah.
if we're looking at B2B.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that the leads stay with the same person? I know you mentioned that, whether that's the same person, whether it's a contact or whether it's a company.
Um, First and foremost, important to understand what your rules are in sales. How long does a salesperson own a lead? Uh, but quite often I'll see, I mean, it just depends, but quite often I'll see that somebody owns a lead for a year. So if anything happens with that account for a year, they get the subsequent leads. Fortunately, in HubSpot does a much better job of associating leads to companies than Salesforce does, because Salesforce, the lead object, doesn't even have a company association. So HubSpot's got one up there where you will be able to see if there's more than one contact at the account.
And are you using that, do you typically have that what is it? The owner associated copy owner from company to account or to contacts?
Uh, that would be one way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd want to do some sort of reference on who the account owner is.
Mhm. Or if, your workflow says copy company owner, that I guess is another one. Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah. So, and why are re-engaged leads so much higher value than those net new leads, um, in your experience?
Usually it means that they're further along in the buyer journey, that you passed that initial, okay, I'm listening to you, whatever. And now they're like, all right, maybe. It just usually means that they're further along in the buyer journey. They've decided to actually give you a serious look now, as opposed to just a flyby.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Um, all right, then is it a good time to jump in over to HubSpot and take a look at what we might
Let's jump in.
let's jump in. All right. Um, so I'm just using the combined score here for simplicity. But I think be helpful to just start thinking through, what are some things you would identify for a re-engaged lead, that might trigger sending it back to sales.
So if you're doing it this way, would it make sense to look up the lead score? Like, if they already have a lead score that isn't deprecated.
Well, it depends. I have some clients that we have a different score for re-engaged leads.
Mhm.
We're scoring those leads separately. Oh, Kathy's seeing a black screen. Let me remove this and add it back and see if that's helps at all. So I have some clients that have a whole different score for re-engaged leads. Purpose in that being that you can filter the leads. Sorry, I'm seeing if that's.
And that makes sense.
Let me know if that is working now. Thank you.
Where my train of thought was going was that, if they already have a score,
Mhm.
they were already a lead. And
Mhm.
not your re-engagement score, but if they have the standard score, if they have a value there,
Mhm.
then that's probably one enrollment indicator.
So I think the reason I usually break it out is I might give a higher score. So where in the original scoring, I might give 10 points for visiting the pricing page. If they're re-engaged, then I might give 20 or so and do it
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just talking about enrollment criteria.
Mhm.
Um, so for this would be, well, this says combined score, but would you be in this score property here, would you be is this creating the re-engagement score?
It could be. It may have. Um, it could be the re-engagement score. It could also be. It may have different criteria. So a lot of times I'll only include people here that have MQL'd, or in the case of like a company, your company is already MQL'd. Um, and so now we're coming back to these leads from there. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, yes, we could use their lead score. Um, and we could use their lead score as the
I would
first.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that as enrollment criteria.
Mm.
But
So like
things, let's say engagement, um, would it be, let's say they attend a webinar, attend a trade show, like come to your booth at a trade show,
Mhm.
uh, visit the website, but visit thought leadership content, visit the website, but download thought leadership content. Similarly to your initial lead scores, anything that's higher up in the funnel gets a lower score. And if it's lower in the funnel, it gets a higher score. Um, the types of situations, I don't know how you would do this, so we'll see how smart you are. I know you're very smart. Um, the types of situations where kind of any activity is interesting to me is the one where I was talking about, where I see the C-suite come in after we already have like some kind of lead on that account.
Mhm.
Um, if they come in and they do anything at all, uh, I'm still very, very interested that we've got somebody from the C-suite looking at the product now.
So I wonder if all right, so if we're saying anyone from the C-suite, how would we do that? I think maybe we would create a workflow. I mean, and this is where when we talked last week, Trisha, you mentioned you don't always use a scoring property for this. Sometimes you just use a list.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm wondering if we just create a list. Not there. List. Create list. Could we create job title contains chief, and let's even see last scene. Well, all right. We don't always. They'd have to submit a form. The C-suite. We would have to have them cookied.
Yep.
Just it's less than 7 days ago, and company stage start being qualified. So we could do something like this
Mhm.
to identify specifically the C-suite, if the C-suite's engaged.
Mhm.
If you're using the lead object, you might want to exclude if they already have a lead open or something like that. You could notify the team, but you might not
Mhm.
want to like open a new lead if a lead's already open.
Mhm.
but yeah, so you could do something like this, using a list, using a workflow. And then also a couple weeks ago, I built an account score. You can
Mhm,
also kind of incorporate that account score and say, if a company is a, let's say, marketing qualified lead, I'm using that, assuming that when I do the handoff from marketing to sales, I'm updating the company to marketing qualified.
mhm,
And there are some organizations where I might say marketing qualified or sales qualified here, and even opportunity potentially if it's a closed lost opportunity. That's all
mhm,
going to kind of depend on how you're organizing that. Closed lost opportunities, I could probably go on a long tangent about. Definitely keep an eye out for those as well. But I think these are all things you might want to filter. To your point though, Trisha, like depending on your personas, might depend on what the standard is. So if it's someone in the C-suite, whatever they do, they visit the website, we want to send a notification. However, if it's an influencer, if it's an individual contributor, something like that,
mhm,
then we might want to see a little bit more action to be taken.
mhm,
So that's where your lead scoring alone isn't always like enough. Like there's the filtering on top of your lead scoring. So if your contact has a lead score, and that is where maybe you don't need for your company, you may not need a re-engage score. You might just have a lead score, and you might say our net new lead score threshold is 100,
mhm,
but our re-engaged lead score is 50. So if they're already in MQL, if they're already in SQL, and then they go back over a score of 50, then that's enough. You will need to
yeah.
be using
C
DKs or
In the
diminishing.
scenario that we were talking about earlier where they come in last week, they fill out a contact us form, they go to the sales team, but they come in this week, they come in today and they look at the pricing page.
Mhm,
That's only a page view. That in most scoring models is a really low level, but that's absolutely somebody I want to get that in front of sales.
mhm.
So what do you do with that? Do you do you do it the way you just described by um in terms of workflow routing, pick anybody with a do you set it up as a re-engage score and then use workflow routing to say if it's like if it's a new lead and the score is X, do this, but if it's a re-engaged lead and the score is Y?
I think that's why I have set it up as a separate score in the past because, um, like you said, a page view tends to be a very low score, but if they've already talked to sales, then suddenly that score is higher. I
Mhm,
care way more if they visited the pricing page. And even so much so that, like, it's if they, if we pass them to sales and they just did not talk to sales at all, totally ghosted sales, I don't know if I would give them visiting the pricing page again as high of a score as someone that did a demo with sales, and then it just ghosted them or didn't move forward for any reason. So that's even where like the closed lost opportunities, for example,
mhm,
I think
mhm,
are even a higher value in the scoring model, which you have two options, really. You either say that for closed lost opportunities, the scoring threshold is lower, or you create a new score based on what you want to see in a closed lost opportunity versus a net new.
mhm. Maybe you give them maybe there's a scoring range you give them based on how far they get in their life cycle stage. So,
Mm.
like,
Mhm.
if they got up to here, they get that. If they got to opportunity, which could map to the deal stages, maybe
Mhm.
deal stages or maybe life cycle stage.
All right. So
Do people set up specific life cycle stages for close lost? How do most people tag that?
um I don't like to set up a new life cycle stage for closed lost. I have this whole like analogy where life cycle stages are like education. So you're a lead when you graduated high school, an MQL once you got your associate's degree, and so on. So once you're an opportunity, maybe that's your bachelor's degree. Even if you don't move on to become a customer, you still have your bachelor's degree. You still have that information about the company. I
Mhm.
would instead use the deal associations or like the lead status fields, like the sub fields, to filter close lost versus
Okay.
whether it's an open opportunity.
Okay.
That's my philosophy on it.
I like that, except if the opportunity lost date is like 2 years ago,
Mhm.
because there's a really good chance that the person who was part of that deal isn't even at the company anymore.
Mhm. Um, that's true, and that's true really even of an MQL. So if they became an MQL 5 years ago, um, do you treat that as a net new MQL or do you treat that as a, um
Yeah, if it's old, I tend to treat it as a net new.
mhm,
For example, if it's, again, going back to sales rules, if it's something that happened in the last year and my rule is that sales owns the leads for a year, then I give it back to the existing salesperson. But if it's been more than a year, then I just treat it as a brand new lead and it goes to the BDR team.
that's fair, and it's getting me thinking about how I'm setting up this. So if we were in this scoring to give a score of 10 for if you're an marketing qualified lead, is it better to use can you not use that? Oh, no.
Also, are we overcomplicating it? I mean, there aren't that many of these that are coming through, right? And the whole point is you just want to make sure that it gets sales attention. So they're like, okay, this is not a brand new lead. This is extra.
Mhm,
And like you go look at the account and see what happened. You're supposed to do that as part of the discovery process anyway.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, you can figure out what makes sense for your sales team and how frequently this is happening. But I think the most important thing is that you should have a process for sending people back. I think it is way too common that I go into an account and we have tons of processes set up for net new. But when someone returns, the workflows are set up so not to re-enroll people and not to send back to sales.
Hmm.
And I think that's a huge missed opportunity. And in fact, we should make it easier for contacts to re-enroll, not harder at all.
Yeah.
But also it's worth thinking about what actions are actually valuable actions. I think website visits, specifically based on job title, um, I would I would be hesitant to take email on its own personally, email opens, email clicks. Um, I would prefer to see a website visit just because email data is unreliable, how it gets
Hmm.
passed to HubSpot. So I wouldn't incorporate that. Um, I would just give more points to website visits because if they really did click, then they should have
Hmm.
a website visit logged. Um, And then if they've went to a webinar or if they went to a webinar, if they filled out a form, that should get passed to sales very quickly. Even if it's just an ebook or resource like that, having the sales rep that they already spoke to reach out and ask, what was why did they download that? What did they find value in it? And things like that, I think. And having, to your earlier point, Trisha, having that same sales rep, really important.
I always like to let them know, just because it's an opportunity to nurture the lead, to establish a relationship, to open the door and say, hey, it's me again. Hi, remember me?
Yeah. So what does that look like? What has that looked like in organizations you've worked at? Has it been through a workflow with a task? Has it been through sending a new lead over? What does that look like?
To be honest, I've never used a ton of automation around this, because it's I don't know. I haven't seen that it's more than maybe 10% of your inbound leads every day.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on lead volume, it can be very manageable to just give it a quick look, and then, through a note in HubSpot, just tag the salesperson, be like, hey, this is a second time around person.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all, obviously it's a drag. It's a drag on your time to be focusing on those areas. So I really like the idea of automating this more.
Mm-hmm. I think if I was building a new one based on our conversation today, I think I would set up a workflow that says if company, really, assuming that you're syncing your company lifecycle stages, I'm going to make that assumption. But if the company is a lifecycle stage, MQL, SQL opportunity, and there's a page visit, then add a note to the record, the company, add a task to the assigned rep, and tag them. I think it can be that simple. And if you have too much volume like that, then you can readjust. Then you can make it more strict. Then you can say just pricing page views, just form submissions, just these job titles. But if you're
that's such a good problem to have. What's happening? I'm gonna set up an alert on that workflow, so that if it happens more than X time in a month, or in a week, I'm getting alerted anyway. Never mind. I just had a question. I forgot it.
And if your reps are getting annoyed, it's a great problem if your reps are getting annoyed. And but to your point, I think it's better to have this less complicated, because it is such an underused notification in most HubSpot instances that starting simple is going to be your most effective.
Yeah. To your point earlier, what you said was so spot on. Too many workflows are all focused on brand new leads, and they may not even have re-enrollment criteria turned on, or it may not reflect, like, you've added some forms, you tested some pages, which created some test forms. They may not even be set up for re-enrollment on all the criteria. So make sure that somebody who comes through a second time around, even if they are submitting the contact us form, that it's still going through the lead routing workflow. Did you said something about notes earlier. Can you create a note on a lead or an account record through a workflow?
I know, as soon as I said it, I was like, I just
I really I really love that if that's possible.
Uh, yeah. Look at this. Look at this. Great. Create note.
That's really cool. That's really cool. HubSpot's so smart.
HubSpot's so smart. All right. So I think my takeaways from this session, number one, maybe you don't need a score specifically for re-engaged leads. Maybe you just need a workflow set to re-enroll and to create a note and tag those. If it's B2B, then it would be based on the company record. And if you're doing B2C, then it's based on the contact record. And if they were an MQL, an SQL, an opportunity, and they're visiting the website, then maybe you should be sending them back through. You can certainly create a score if that works better for your internal systems, but it might not be necessary, and having something's better than not having anything.
Mhm.
All right.
I love it.
Any final thoughts, Trisha?
No, I think we did a great job. Yeah, yes.
All right. Thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, if you have issues with setting up that type of workflow, feel free to send myself or Trisha a message on LinkedIn. We are happy to help answer any questions you might have. If you are building a score, whether it's a net new score or a re-engagement score, also feel free to send us any questions you might have. Our DMs are always open.
Yeah, and what are you doing about the whole account lifecycle, contact lifecycle thing? Are you mirroring that? Are you not?
I typically mirror them.
I do too.
I typically mirror them. And yeah, thank you guys all for joining us, and keep an eye out for our next event. I don't know what it will be, but feel free to comment below if there's any lead scoring or HubSpot questions you have that we can answer for you. I hope you all have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.